let's go ahead and get started. Today, I'm going to be introducing Banzai's newest tool, which is a personal finance standards database. Um, and this is really exciting. It's actually something that you can use whether or not you use Banzai. We're hoping to incorporate it in a lot of different financial literacy tools and digital citizenship. So, um, just a few things. If you have any issues with audio, check your device, make sure that your volume's turned up. If you have a device that is on the Bluetooth, that's working. Um, if it is a problem on my end, there are two folks monitoring this to make sure that everything is going right. So they will let me know. If you have questions, those two people are also going to be answering questions in real time and pausing my webinar so that they can ask me if that needs to happen. But so just go ahead and put those in the chat and we can get some discussion going as I present this tool. And then also reach out anytime through our social media platforms that are all at Teach Bonsai. You can visit bonsai.org. You can email us at support@bonsai.org. But let's get into it. So my name is Nicole Clayton. I'm the Director of Education at Banzai. Just to be cheeky and silly, I had this little image of me created at a conference via an AI, and I think it is very silly and looks not that much like me, but I thought it'd be fun to put it in to the webinar and just say like, "Ooh, look, tools, AI." It has nothing to do with anything, and I just think it's funny. But let's get going with a quick agenda. I want to kind of start this presentation with some of the reasons that personal finance standards are so difficult to understand and to make sense of. And if you're in a state where you're thinking, well, my curriculum director says one thing. My teacher who teaches the same subject at a neighboring district, their director says another thing. I go to a conference and I'm asking what are the standards, and they say one thing. I just want you to know you're not alone, that is very, very typical in the world of personal finance, and we'll get into it a little bit. And then we'll talk about this database and what we hope to help, and how we hope to help with it. And then I'll do a little demo and we can talk about some lesson planning in the end. So, yeah, let's get into it. Why keeping up with state personal finance standards is so hard. And there's a few things that play into this. One is that sometimes personal finance, as much as we care so much about it as educators and as vendors in the space, sometimes it passes as a quote unquote feel good law. So we're pushing to try and make sure that every student really gets to learn these concepts that we wish so badly that we got to learn in high school. But then we get to the legislation level, and sometimes it really just sounds great to have the personal finance standard, but it passes before we're able to really legislate what that means and how we're going to oversee it and what those standards look like and who's going to be accountable to who for what. We're so excited to get the personal finance in that some of that organizational stuff gets left behind. And on top of that, states are moving really, really fast and moving all at once. So, at the start of this year, nearly 30 states had some kind of mandate, but nearly 80% of states are either have a mandate or are actively working on one, trying to get one through legislation. So, we went from 2000 and gosh, I think it was like 2001, 2005 maybe, where Utah passed, and then years of silence, and then a few more states, and then all of a sudden we're getting 10 states at once trying to move legislation through about personal finance. But we're not all moving in the same direction. So you have a lot of states that are mandating a standalone personal finance course, and then you have some states that are baking it into math, and some states that are baking it into social studies, and some states have these in grade bands or strands or no specification at all. It's very, very diverse, and you're not going to be teaching the same personal finance standards that your neighboring state is going to be teaching. So you can't really compare. And if you get into a national forum with a bunch of different teachers from all across the US, it's not like a Common Core or other standardized curriculum where you're going to be able to say like, oh, I'm hoping to move into this unit next week, and when do you guys do this unit? It's going to be so diverse. You won't be able to even talk about it in the same way. And then on top of that, these standards are often distributed in a dozen different formats. So you might have some online at your state department. You might have it buried in the math standards in this one section, or an optional portion of social studies that you have to like dig through and go to the alternative study standards, or something. There's so many different ways that it could be presented. And then we have every state using different words for the same skills. And at Banzai, we see this all the time when we're trying to align our content to state standards. We really have to start doing it one by one instead of just going, okay, let's try to create a lesson that will knock out all of these standards. It gets to a point where it's like, well, Alabama says it this way, and Arkansas says it this way, and they're just different enough that how do we meet those standards? And so for example, one state might say construct a personal budget, and another state say allocate income across spending categories. And those seem like really they're the same thing, right? And it shouldn't be a big deal, but it does make it hard to kind of coordinate and plan your curriculum and find and use different resources. And then there's no agreement nationally on when we're teaching what. So some states were saying, okay, we'll start savings in third grade, but some you don't have any personal finance at all until 10th. And so if you're moving from a state as a teacher, or again, you're trying to work with other teachers and plan these lesson plans, it's just there's so much variety. And then it all changes. So this year alone, 5 different states completely upended their personal finance standards, and they made new standards in new places for new grades, or they went from having an optional financial literacy standard to a mandated one, or as part of a different curriculum into a standalone course. It's just hard to track. And so the thing that I have said and I've heard before is it really is like the Wild West when it comes to personal finance. It's new, it is quickly evolving, but there's no like central foundation nationally. It's kind of it's the Wild West. It's just it's hard to track, right? And so that's why we built this tool. We really felt like we needed some way for educators, for district leads, for even folks that are creating financial literacy curriculum to be able to see exactly what the standards are in a really easy way. So this database, and I'm going to show it in just a moment, it is free. It is complete. We have all 50 states in this database, plus US territories and Washington, D.C. We also have the national standards, Jumpstart and CEE standards, and we're updating it all the time. So if new legislation passes, we're updating it, and then we're also auditing and checking these standards quarterly. So you're pretty confident that everything is exactly up to date. So to show off this new tool, I thought it would be nice to kind of work through a few different scenarios. So one, my admin asked if my lesson or my class or my course or my curriculum or whatever meets the standards. What do you do? I'm planning a unit on personal finance. You can use this database to kind of structure that unit. How does my state structure financial literacy standards? Because they're all different. And then, of course, how will I tie that into what I teach in Bonsai? So let's move over to the database. And this is how you can navigate to it. So if you go to bonsai.org, and scroll all the way to the bottom. There is a link, state standards, and click that. Or you can bookmark banzai.org/standards. And this is the database. So you can pick any state and kind of look into what those standards are. So let's go through that first demo scenario that I talked about. My admin asked if my curriculum meets state standards. So let's say you're a teacher in Wisconsin. From this map, you navigate to Wisconsin. Here are your standards. And it is genuinely that easy. But I kind of want to show what it would look like if you didn't have this database, using Wisconsin as an example. So we found these standards ourselves. So you might, as a teacher, have to Google like Wisconsin financial literacy standards and navigate to it on your own. But we got to these standards, we downloaded this, and this is where it gets kind of tricky to like parse through all of this information, right? Because you have a bunch of history on the standards, which is all valuable. It's all valuable, but it might not be what you're looking for right at that moment. So you have a bunch of history and a bunch of reasoning and where we got there. And then you have how to read this chart. And then you have the chart itself at some point. You know what I mean? It gets complicated. And every state has something like this. So if we go back to the Banzai database, this is all you have to do. So if your administrator comes to you and says, does your curriculum meet state standards? And let's say you teach financial literacy for ninth graders, it's all just right here. And you can go to a lesson plan that you have on, let's say, finding a career. You go to the education and employment, and everything is just in one place. So it just makes it a lot easier to navigate and find these standards that you can then copy and paste and put exactly into your lesson plan or your administration notes or wherever you need to do to show that to your administrator. So that's one of those demo scenarios that I talked about initially. Moving on to the next one, let's say, and let me remind myself what that is. Oh, I'm planning a unit on personal finance. Let's use Utah for this one. That's where I'm at. Um, let's say I just got assigned financial literacy and I've never taught it before. And this happens a lot. I remember when I was learning financial literacy, actually at high school, it was the woodshop teacher. They were kind of like, hey, will you teach financial literacy this year? And he's like, sure. And jumped in and tried to teach it. And so that happens a lot. And then you have to build a whole unit without a lot of resource materials or different things. So if you want to use this database to build your curriculum, it's really easy. So let's say in Utah, I'm a high school teacher. I'm going to go here. And then if I pick one of these strands, let's say I want to go to 5 and I go to standard 1, all of these standards are basically outlining lesson plans for me, right? So I can take these, find them really quickly, take these elements and start making those units and start making those lesson plans using the standards without having to dig through that really complicated PDF. So this is actually a precursor to something that Banzai is building that I'm really, really excited about. I don't want to spoil anything too soon, but the standards database is a foundation for new tooling that we're building right now as we speak, like just got out of a meeting talking about it, where it's going to do a lot of this process for you. But in the meantime, you can start looking at this raw data and looking at these standards and start building those units and those lesson plans. And then let's talk about the third demo, which is how my state structures standards, because like I said, they're all different. You can tell, as you can see, like Utah does it in strands, but let's look at Alabama, because Alabama actually has financial literacy in a couple different places. They have it as a course of study, and they also have it as an element within their computer science as well. And so let's go to personal finance standards. I now know that it is applicable to high school. And then I can see the foundational standards and how those are then broken up into substandards. So this is how Alabama does it. But like I said, every state does it a little bit differently. And it's nice to be able to parse this out in one place instead of trying to, like I said, go to the curriculum website and then working through it all that way. So the last thing I kind of wanted to talk about with this demo site is, okay, great. I can build a unit. I can build a lesson plan. I can find my state standards. This is sure. But what if I'm a bonsai teacher? Like, how do I use this database to justify my bonsai curriculum? And if you navigate to the database, and honestly, if you go to bonsai.org/curriculum, and then you can get into the standards, see how bonsai aligns with these standards. So that'll take you to this site, which is very similar, but the critical difference is this is specific to bonsai. So this is Minnesota. And these are all of the bonsai games that satisfy those standards. So we built this tool off of the other one, but applied it specifically to bonsai. And the reason we wanted to make sure that teachers have both is we know that you create all of your lessons and all of your curriculum with a bunch of different resources, and that you'll use bonsai and you might use something else here, or you might have a slide deck there and you want to make sure that you fulfill each standard. So here's how Banzai will do it. And you can use consumer smarts to meet this standard, or you can use something else with that standards database and know exactly what you're hitting and when. So this, I have to admit, and I'm sure you guys can tell, that this is just really straightforward. It's just an audited, up-to-date, central place to look at every financial literacy standard in the US. That's all it is. And we tried to make it as easy to navigate as possible. And so I'm sure you're kind of like, Nicole, you're showing me the same thing over and over again, and you're calling it a different scenario. I understand, but the what we really wanted it to be was just extremely easy to use and something that you could use in a bunch of different ways. So that's kind of the bulk of this webinar, to be honest. I'm going to go back to the slides, but just kind of curious, Natalie, who's monitoring the chat, is there any questions right now that I can address about this database so far? Sorry to put
We
you on.
ha we haven't had any yet.
Okay, great.
But if you wanted to look up, we do have people joining us from New York,
Sure.
Portland, Oregon, Minnesota. Allison, oh, Lisa is asking. Sorry, Lisa, I called you by your last name. Lisa Allison. Um, is wondering how she gets here. Will you show her again the URL and then how to get there from the
Yes.
website?
So the URL is bonsai.org/standards. And then right now it's actually kind of hidden on the Bonsai website. So I'll walk through that again. Just go to bonsai.org. If you're logged in, you need to go to this in like incognito or log out to see this landing page, and then scroll to the bottom, and it's here under solutions, state standards. And again, if you would prefer to see how Bonsai aligns with the standards, that URL is bonsai.org/curriculum, or from the Bonsai site, go to solutions, or actually, where is that? Curriculum alignment, sorry, resources, curriculum alignment, and that will show how Bonsai meets the standards. So those are the two different things that we were talking about today. The general kind of standards database, which is here, and then how Bonsai specifically meets those standards. So, anything else? Oh, you were saying we should go through and look at a few states. So we have someone here from New York. Hello. Let's go to this standard. We tried to include too as many citations as we could and background into the site as well. So you can kind of see what the bill was, when it was passed, what it hoped to do, and then you can go in and look at the standards themselves. And so and let me see. Yep. Uh, Maine. And then as legislation gets passed, as I said, we're going back and we're adding all of those in as well. And the national standards too, the Jumpstart national standards we have in here, pretty easy to navigate, and the Council for Economic Education as well. Anything else, Natalie?
I don't see any other questions, but feel free to drop those in the chat if you have a standard you want Nicole to look up or a question about working with standards in your state.
Yes. And the other thing too is this is a new tool. We built it, we released it. We feel really confident about it, but there might be things that you're like, well, I wish there were more detail here, or I kind of wish that that was different. And please, we're actually building a way to flag those things within the standard database itself. So you might be able to click a little hey, something looks funny, and let us know. But in the meantime, please, please, please don't hesitate to reach out to support at bonsai.org or to me personally, Nicole, Nikole at bonsai.org, or find me on LinkedIn or however, so that we can know if there are issues. We want to make this a powerful tool for you. We really want it to help teachers and district administrators as much as possible. That is our number one goal. So,
Nicole, I
yeah.
have a question. Jules is
Yes.
asking, is there a way to print them? Do we just need to print in the browser or is there a different way to print these?
Oh, that's a great question. Right now, you would just need to print in the browser. So, the way you would do it anywhere, right click print or Command P. But that's an excellent idea to make a download button for each state that you can just download them as a PDF. Sorry, I'm actually going to write that down. That was a great idea. I love that. Okay, great. Thank you. Okay, so one thing that you might want to do, and this is just very broadly speaking, how you might use the standards database in your lesson plan or for lesson planning. And we kind of already talked about this already. And I also think there's a big part of this that is kind of intuitive and you've been doing it forever, right? But hopefully that this database can make easier is you can navigate to your state, find that grade level, see all the expectations, choose a topic, find the exact standard, and then turn that standard into learning objectives. So you can do this on your own. A lot of the standards already read as learning objectives, or you could copy and paste it into a tool, like a lesson planner tool or an AI, a generative AI, if that's something that you like to use and have it create learning objectives for you. And then you can, of course, see how Bonsai aligns with those, or you can look for other tools and implement those into your lesson, and then build the lesson plan using those learning outcomes. And I recognize too that a lot of you are like, Nicole, duh. We do this we are the experts here on this. But to use that standard to then make the hook and the activity and a reflection and an assessment standard first instead of finding these resources and then matching them to the standard if you wanted to make them yourself using the standard first. This is a tool that we really hope will enable you to do that a lot easier than it may have been in the past. And
Nicole,
honestly, yeah, yeah,
sorry, one more question.
yes,
Lisa's
please.
asking, how does having a Bonsai account help?
So the main thing with the Bonsai account, with this is just using the Bonsai activity specifically to meet your state standards. Otherwise, this is just a tool we hope will help anyone with or without a Bonsai account. Um, if you're using like nothing within the standards database itself will be improved with a Banzai account. So it's not like if you have a Banzai account, you'll see more now, or it'll save notes you take on it, or anything like that. It really is just a matter of you might want to create one if the Banzai tools that we have align with standards that you're missing or that you want to be hitting. So that kind of I hope that kind of helps. But yeah, you don't need an account. And we just want to be able to help as many teachers as possible with this. Um, but yeah, this was a short and sweet webinar, and I really just wanted to kind of show this new tool and make sure it doesn't, I know it's a little buried on our website, but I think it could be really powerful and I think it could be really helpful. And that's what we want it to be and we want it to do if you're using Bonsai or not. Um, for anyone teaching financial literacy, even if it's a part of a broader curriculum subject like social studies or math or digital citizenship. So we've curated state standards for both of those right now. And that's it. Um, Following this webinar, which is practically over already, you'll get a link to submit a survey and receive your PD certificate for attending. And I'm so grateful that you all did. And that is all I have for you. So anything else before we go, Natalie, flag me down, but I think that's it. Okay. Thank you so much, everyone, and have the happiest of holidays. And I just so appreciate everyone who popped on for this quick little tour. And I hope it's helpful to you. And please don't hesitate to reach out with any questions or thoughts or feedback. Thank you and goodbye.